Hi class, so we're going to do two shorter ones today. And we're going to talk about Italian neorealism and as well as the French New Wave. So, post World War II cinema, American film distribution and exhibition dominated European cinema. This is true today. American cinema dominates all over the world. As much as 50% of films shown in theaters were from the US. European film industries evolved into national co-productions, film festivals, and it was more modernist or art cinema in Europe versus Hollywood. So Italian neorealism, from approximately from 45 to 51, Italian filmmakers reacted to economic and social turmoil during this period of history. Under Mussolini, the film industry produced epics and propaganda film. The film industry did not match the times. The reaction was a turn toward both objective and subjective realism in both story and style. So we wanted to reveal unpleasantness of poverty and war, concentrating on minute details, sounds, and actions, inner thoughts and dreams of regular people. So everyday people doing everyday things. Who is associated with this movement, such as filmmakers like Roberto Rossellini, and films such as Open City. The style, so you had long takes, you often had location shooting, dubbed dialogue, documentary like cinematography, natural lighting, actors chosen for their realistic looks and mannerisms. So this is a short clip from a film called Paisan. It's about 9 minutes. You will have to watch this whole clip because I have a couple of quiz questions associated with it. We'll just watch like a minute of it, just so you can get a feel of what Italian neorealism was like. So this is an American soldier stationed in Italy after World War II. So you can see the rubble and you can see the poverty. Again, watch that entire clip because there'll be some quiz questions on it. So the narrative style and content, it was overtly political. So it was a concentration on poor people and economic conditions. So they wanted to change society with these films. Characters are often motivated by social and economic pressures. Scenes will sometimes open on shots before action takes place and hold on shots after the action's conclusions. And then you have micro actions. We watch character perform mundane, everyday, insignificant actions. So this is, as you watch this film from Umberto D, watch this woman. She just gets up to make coffee. And if you watch really, really carefully, she'll indicate that she's pregnant, and so the sadness on her face reveals that she realizes her child's going to be brought up in this poverty, just as she was. Again, everyday people doing everyday things. See how she touches her, and so she knows she's pregnant, and she feels sad. With the realization her child will live the same poverty that she does. So again, overtly political. I also wanted to tie Italian neorealism into a more current film, which would be Wim Wenders' Paris, Texas. So this came kind of at an interesting time where the film industry was sort of weren't sure if like good films were being made anymore, and then this film came out and people were like at the Cannes Film Festival, well, this was so great. Maybe if there's hope for film yet. So in this final scene, you have two characters, a man and a woman, and they're gonna meet in a room where has a two-way mirror, and he's come to look at her sort of get naked, and so she's sort of living this life as like a dancer, and she can't see him though. And the interesting thing is, they were once married years ago, and they had a big falling out between the two of them, and now this is them coming together after all these years because they have a son together, and the man is trying to reunite the son with the mother. So we won't watch all of this, but do watch this entire clip because there'll be a quiz question on this one as well. This is one of the better film endings you'll see.
Hey.
Hi. Can I tell you something?
Sure. Anything you like.
It's kind of long.
I got plenty of time.
I knew these people.
What people?
These two people. They were in love with each other. The girl was very young, about 17 or 18, I guess. And the guy was quite a bit older. And he was kind of raggedy and wild. And she was very beautiful, you know?
Yeah.
And together they turned everything into a kind of an adventure. And she liked that. Just an ordinary trip down to the grocery store was full of adventure. And they were always laughing at stupid things. He liked to make her laugh. And they didn't much care for anything else because all they wanted to do was be with each other. They were always together.
Sounds like they were very happy.
Yes, they were. They were real happy. And he loved her more than he ever felt possible. He couldn't stand being away from her during the day when he went to work. So he'd quit, just to be home with her. Then he'd get another job when the money ran out. And then he'd quit again. But pretty soon she started to worry.
About what?
Money, I guess. Not having enough. Not knowing when the next check was coming in.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
So he started to get kind of torn inside.
How do you mean?
Well, he knew he had to work to support her, but he couldn't stand being away from her either.
Nah,
And the more he was away from her, the crazier he got. Except now, he got really crazy. He started imagining all kinds of things.
like what?
So she's slowly starting to figure out that it's her long lost husband. Again, watch all of that. So I want to jump to the French New Wave then. So again, this really changed American film in that, especially in terms of acting. I mentioned Jimmy Stewart in Vertigo, and it's sort of a rigid performance, and acting became much more natural after the French New Wave. So it was influenced by neorealism and classical Hollywood cinema. The Cachus de Cinema, these are critics as filmmakers. They're a group of critics that practiced in attacking the French film establishment and decided to make their own films. These would emphasize the distinctness of the director. So that's kind of what we're going at with this semester. And while admiring classical filmmaking, they completely rejected it for their own films and style. The style was casual, the opposite of Hollywood. The style of each filmmaker and film could be very distinct, but there were enough similarities to highlight and distinguish an overall style. Not polished, it could even seem sloppy at times. The cinematography was handheld, very mobile camera, tracking shots. The setting, no sets, location only, often everyday cramped locations like bedrooms, small apartments. The editing had discontinuity, images and shots did not always move smoothly, and you'd have jump cuts. So basically a jump cut, if you have the camera, like here, it has to move at least 30 degrees, otherwise the viewer will notice. So if you go from here to here, like maybe 10 to 15 degrees, it's going to appear as a jump cut. So let's just take a look at a jump cut from a movie called Breathless. So in this is probably the most famous of the French New Wave, and in it, this character, he wants to emulate American cinema, but he ends up getting in trouble with the police, and he's running from the law, and he ultimately picks up an American girlfriend, and the two of them form a relationship. But again, eventually the law catches up with him. But watch for jump cuts in this particular scene.
Elle est au garage. Allez, quoi, je reste avec toi.
De toute façon, j'ai mal à la tête.
On ne sera pas ensemble, mais je vais rester à côté de toi.
Non, ce n'est pas ça, Michel.
So there's a jump cut right there when she was playing with her hair. Jump cut right there.
Parce que je suis triste.
C'est idiot. Pourquoi tu es triste? C'est mieux quand je dis vous ou tu.
Pareil, je peux pas me passer de toi.
Tu peux très bien.
Oui, mais je veux pas.
So jump cuts and
Regarde,
very
elle est beau. Elle est
natural performances amongst the actors. And that carried over into American cinema. Actors, they are a mix of professional and non, sometimes chosen because of their association with the filmmakers. The narrative content, cause and effect, was often very loose, built around chance events, motivation not always present. Characters, especially protagonists, are not aiming to accomplish anything. Actions often do not follow the dramatic situation of the plot. Abrupt shifts of tone and ambiguous endings. So this is a film called The 400 Blows, and the director of the film, he made a series of films that were kind of based off of his life. But this is him, he's about to run away as a little boy, and he's on the beach running, and suddenly the camera is just going to stop in a freeze frame, and that's the end of the film. So it's like, what happened to the boy? Well, you have to sort of decide for yourself. So they're playing soccer, and he kind of runs off on his own and just starts to run along the beach. that's the ending of the film. When we get to documentary film in a few weeks, we'll come back to this freeze frame at the end. Kind of popular for a while. They would play with the medium, striking new techniques or ways to make films. Self-reflexivity, films that make reference or take notice of themselves inside jokes. So this is a scene where the characters are going to try to be silent for 1 minute.
Qu'est-ce qu'on fait?
Je ne sais pas.
And then the camera, the sound will cut out as they're waiting for the 1 minute to pass. So it's self-reflexive.
Passez-moi mon petit truc dans le manteau, s'il vous plaît. Là, dans la poche. Regardez. Mettez votre main autour de la bulle.
Mais il se passe rien.
Le liquide aurait dû monter de l'autre côté.
Bon, puisque personne n'a rien à se dire, on pourrait peut-être faire une minute de silence.
T'inquiète pas, vous êtes vraiment trop bête.
Une minute de silence, ça peut durer très longtemps. Une vraie minute de silence, ça dure une éternité.
Ok. 1, 2, 3.
So then they're silent for a minute, and you get the idea that it's a self-reflexive joke. Now that was from a film called A Band Apart. The filmmaker Quentin Tarantino was very much influenced by it. He calls his own production company A Band Apart off of that film. So watch how this scene mimics a scene that he'll later copy in his film Pulp Fiction. So it's sort of visually interesting, and then in Pulp Fiction, Tarantino incorporates it into his own film.
You'll be a woman soon. I love you so much, can't count all the ways I died for you, girl, and all I can say is he's not your kind. You'll never get tired of putting me down, and I never know when I come around what I'm gonna find. Don't let them make up your mind. Don't you know?
So you can see the influence, it's clear. But that is sort of, these are the big films of the French New Wave, with Breathless and The 400 Blows being amongst the most important. So any questions on the French New Wave, feel free to email me, and I'll see you next week.